This is the Seahawkers Podcast 2022 Seahawks Draft Recap. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me from England, my good buddy and Seahawks Draft blog aficionado, Mr. Rob Staton. Rob, I know that after day one, we had a chat during the live stream. You weren't, I want to get your thoughts on Charles Cross, but not... You weren't in the greatest of mood, I would say, after that particular pick. But as a whole, now that the Seahawks are finished with their 2022 class, how are you feeling about this draft class?
I feel very positive about this draft class, Brandon. And I think with Charles Cross, just to start off there, I think the problem is that if you watch a player and you sort of have an opinion on that player, you can't then just change that opinion because your team drafted him.
Right? Yeah.
So. I mean, if you'd have said to me the Seahawks are going to start a rebuild by drafting a left tackle in a bad quarterback draft, you would go, well, of course. Who would be against such a move? Nobody. I just happen to feel that Charles Cross wasn't worth the top 10 pick. Now, I'm not alone in that. I have been seeing a lot of things on Twitter, people saying it's a universally agreed it was a great pick and stuff like that. Well, Lance Zierlein has him like the 17th rated player. Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 22nd rated player. So to take him at 9, that's substantially higher than those two guys had him graded. And I was closer to them than the PFF and the other people who were saying, like Dane Brugler, I think had him as 7th best overall prospect. But I'm at peace with the pick. I mean, there's no point. I mean, they didn't draft Vladimir Putin. They drafted Charles Cross. So I'm more than happy to see how this plays out. It's not the end of the world that they've drafted somebody that I didn't happen to rate that highly. I could easily be very wrong, and I hope in 3 or 4 years' time I am, and he has a great career. I just think he needs to get in a training program now. I think he needs to build up his strength, to become bigger, to get some more muscle definition, and prepare himself for the NFL, because he's not going to be able to do a lot of the stuff that he did in the air raid offense in the NFL. So that may mean that he doesn't have the greatest rookie season, by the way. But long haul, let's give him a try. I'm not going to write him off. Let's see if he can be a big success story.
Well, and staying on the offensive line, and another air raid guy. And if Charles Cross was bad value to the Rob Staton draft positioning, Abraham Lucas was a guy that you were talking about as a potential early second round offensive tackle. So a guy there that you didn't think was going to be there in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I mean, if Dallas had taken him at 24 instead of the guy that they did, I think that I would have said, what a great pick, and would have celebrated that deal for Dallas. So to get him in round 3, I was really surprised that he lasted to round 3. I think Abraham Lucas has been completely underrated throughout this process. I'm starting to question what people actually want in an offensive tackle off the back of this, because all the guy did was that he had good tape. He had a good game against Kayvon Thibodeau, which is, you can only judge him against the players that he plays against, and he played Thibodeau very well. He looks perfectly proportioned for a tackle. If you want to draft a tackle for the NFL, he looks like Abraham Lucas. He just looked perfectly proportioned. Ran well at the combine in the 40. Explosive tester. Great short shuttle. On-field drills. Absolutely smashed them. Looked fantastic. Looked like I said it at the time. Said it a lot of times since. I thought he was the best performer in the on-field drills during the O-line session at the combine. I don't really know why he's not gone at least in the top 50. So the fact that he was there at the start of the 3rd round is an absolute bargain. I'm absolutely delighted with that pick. And I had him in, like I said, in the sort of like a fringe 1st, 2nd round pick. And I genuinely think if they'd have, because I think that I don't know if you saw that John Schneider had referenced that they saw a trade up vanish in the 1st round.
Right.
And I'm convinced it can only be one thing. And that's that as soon as the Giants took Thibodeau at 5, instead of the offensive lineman, it took away the chance to move up for Thibodeau.
Right. And to move up with Carolina, they have the relationship there with the Panthers. The Panthers needed more draft picks. That trade would have made a ton of sense. And yeah, if Thibodeau would have been the guy to fall. Now, if they get Thibodeau in the top 6, then maybe they don't take Boye Mafe at the top of the 2nd round.
Yeah, I found the whole thing interesting and also a little bit weird. I mean, that part of me would have said, "Well, just move up for Evan Neal instead." It's just obviously they didn't feel the same way about Neal. Perhaps had Neal similarly rated to Cross and thought it's not worth it, and Thibodeau was on a different sort of level for them. But yeah, so I can't remember the point I was. Oh yes, that's the point I was going to make with that is if they moved up for Thibodeau, I think they may have taken Abraham Lucas in round 2. I think they really liked Abraham Lucas, and I think that they were probably surprised he was still there. I seem to remember because I've not slept much, but when the pick was made, they kind of got the card in right away. There was no sort of mucking about there when they got on the clock in round 3. The Lucas pick went in straight away. So I wouldn't be surprised if they thought, what a bargain as well. And terrific pick. Really excited about that. And you can't complain. When you're rebuilding a team and you take a left tackle and a right tackle who could legitimately start for you for a long time, I think you have to say, yeah, that's a good move.
Saying that people can't complain, I don't know if I'd go there, Rob, because I felt like there was a lot of complaining going on among Seahawks fans at the start of round 2 when they took an edge player who was 23 years old, who, 23, I mean, you're that much closer to retirement at 23. And then they took a running back, Rob. How dare they? According to draft value, I know we've gone away from running backs being a good value at the top of round 1, and then it was okay. Maybe you can take one at the end of round 1 because Andy Reid did it with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so maybe that's okay. Maybe Andy Reid is allowed to take running backs at the end of the first round, and then in a year where you trade away Russell Wilson and you're going to be a running team and you want to go get the best running back on the board. I guess you're not allowed to do that now at the top of the second round.
Brandon, I don't understand Seahawks fans. I've never felt less connected to a large portion of the fan base than sort of seeing some of this stuff.
I don't know how large portion it is, Rob, but
I know it's probably a tiny minority, but the noisiest minority because they're on Twitter. To sort of go chronologically there, the Boye Mafe thing just is bizarre, and it's something that's kind of happened. I noticed this over the last 2 weeks. It's Draft Twitter's latest thing is to complain about players who are slightly older than the younger players, and it's become a faddy thing amongst Draft Twitter people to complain about that. Boye Mafe is a year older than TJ Watt was coming into the league. He's a year older. He's not 5 years older. He's a year older. He's 23 years old. It's like, well, I'm not going to be. So my sort of thought when I saw that, there was one tweet that I saw, but I think that I can imagine a lot of other people were talking about this, and I heard him referenced as old several times. Boye Mafe ran a 1.56 10-yard split. Anything in the 1.5s is elite. It's fantastic 10-yard split, a great burst.
Yeah, Von Miller was what 1.159 or 1.
It will have been in the 1.5s, but that's that. If you look, I always look for 1.5s for edge rushers, and he was a 1.56, a great time. He jumped to 42-inch vertical. He went to the Senior Bowl and won with speed off the edge in 1v1s. He won with power. He showed that he can engage, disengage. He can bull rush. He can, extend his arms and push the pocket. There are so many players in college football who can't do all of those things. He looked, and it made it look effortless. I mean, I kept saying that, and you can go back and read my Senior Bowl write-ups. He was one of the big winners of the Senior Bowl. And immediately after the Senior Bowl, Daniel Jeremiah was going, this guy's a first-round pick. This guy's a first-round pick. That's how good a Senior Bowl Boye Mafe had. But forget all of that because he's 23 years old. I mean, come on. This is preposterous. I had him mocked in my mock 31 to Kansas City. There was a lot of buzz about Kansas City were going to take him at 31. I think they probably would have done if George Karlaftis hadn't dropped to 31 and they took him instead, which is completely understandable. It's a great pick. And I've made a note, actually. I think Jeremiah had him ranked as like the 31st best player. And I think Zealine had him as the 34th best player. And they got him at 40. So I don't see why you would complain about that. And then the running back thing. I mean, goodness me, I
love Kenneth Walker, Rob. I love him as a running back. And if you go and, I mean, everybody says, yes, you can find running backs in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. Yes,
you can't
find them, but you can't find a guy like Kenneth Walker. If you just watch his feet and his ability to make cuts and compare him to the guys that went in the 4th and 5th rounds, it's not the same.
No, and you can find running backs later on. You can find any position later on. You can find any position later on. I mean, you know, Max Crosby, 4th round pick. So that means never take a pass rusher in the.
I could make the argument, Rob, that you can find so many wide receivers in the 4th and 5th rounds, and that taking wide receiver in the 1st round would be a much more terrible value comparatively.
Yeah. Trey Hendrickson was the 5th leading sacker in the NFL last year, so no need to draft pass rushers. Cooper Kupp, because of Cooper Kupp, never ever draft a wide receiver early. Devontae Adams, 2nd rounder. Deebo Samuel, 2nd rounder. Trevon Diggs was the leading interceptor, 2nd rounder. Don't need to take them early. JC Jackson, he's pretty good, but don't need to draft a cornerback early. There's this guy called Tom Brady. He's pretty good. 6 rounders for quarterbacks now, and Russell Wilson's a 3rd. You can find any position later on. If some running backs produce, and look, there are certain schemes, Shanahan's one of them, who do a very good job of producing running stats in a way that other schemes can't. But not everybody can do that, you know. And I sometimes when I listen to these running backs don't matter people, I think they want every team to play exactly the same way and play very boring games. Everyone makes the right decision that they think is the right decision at the right time, and the right down and distance and the right style, and everybody throws a certain amount of times and only runs a certain amount of times in certain scenarios. So you can sit there and actually the end result is not enjoyable for them. What's enjoyable is to sit there and go, oh yes, that was a sufficiently analytical game by the coaches there. And it's like, this isn't sport. This is you know, sport's about a clash of cultures and styles and methods and philosophies, and seeing which is the best, and seeing how you can build teams in different ways. And it's littered with them. You know, the example I keep coming up with is you look at the last 5 teams who won the Football World Cup, the Soccer World Cup. They're all so different to the one that came before it. There's no one way to win. Anybody can win. You could win in soccer by just putting 10 guys behind the ball and trying to win 1-0 every game. You could come out and try and play the most gorgeous football over here and win in that way. And the NFL's no different. The San Francisco 49ers were a quarter away from the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo and a running game and a great pass rush. Equally, there were teams like the Rams who were playing Sean McVay's offense, and you've got the Bengals and the way that they played, and you've got Mahomes and Andy Reid. So there are different ways to win in the NFL. And if you look at the top running backs in the NFL, they were all drafted in the range that Kenneth Walker has just been drafted. And I saw a tweet. I don't want to name names because I hate making it personal. I really don't want to make it personal. But someone said taking Nick Chubb, despite his success, would have been a mistake because you would have still passed on X, Y, Z at different positions. I'm like, how could anybody label drafting Nick Chubb as a mistake just because the position that he plays? If you draft Nick Chubb and let's say a cornerback goes straight after him who also has an equally great career, that's just called 2 really good draft picks by 2 different teams. Right. It's not about, that you made a mistake by not taking that cornerback or whatever. I just find this the stupidest discussion that goes on.
Well, push that all aside, Rob. Push it all aside. And what do you like about Kenneth Walker?
Sorry, I was going off on one there.
I did watch an interview, and I think he does prefer Ken. So Ken Walker.
Oh, he prefers Ken. Oh,
according to the interview that I watched, they were calling him Ken.
We were having a discussion in my workplace today about names that you don't hear anymore, and Ken's kind of one of those names. You would never have a baby Ken these days. So it's good that he's reintroducing the name Ken.
I think Shooter was calling him Kenny, though, but yeah.
We'll get there. We'll understand. We'll understand. Let's just always call him Beast instead or something like that.
Here we go.
So what do I like about him? Throughout the college football season, I do a recap post every Saturday night or Sunday morning when I wake up. And every week during the last season, I felt like I was writing about Kenneth Walker. He was carrying Michigan State, a team where there was no expectations whatsoever. And he truly elevated. They don't have a great quarterback. They don't have a particularly great defense or anything like that. It was Kenneth Walker. His first carry for the Michigan State was something like a 90-yard touchdown run, having transferred from Wake Forest. Every single week that you turned on the tape and watched Michigan State or they watched the game live, he was performing to an exceptional level, and you couldn't ignore him. He then went to the combine, and sometimes Brandon, you're watching the combine, and a guy's physique just stands out to you. You know, his physical appearance really stands out. And I remember writing in my live combine blog, he just looks like a dude. You know, he's walking around there. He's got these huge muscles, great lower half. I mean, he just looked the part of a top NFL running back. He ran a 4.3. He had explosive testing. Just even the look in his eye, you know, just has got something about him. You know, you just think that's a running back. You know, he looks the part. On tape, he's exceptional at sort of when he needs a yard, he can get a yard. But if he can find a crease, he'll explode and accelerate, and he'll take it 90 yards. He is very, very good at being patient, waiting for that gap to develop. He doesn't rush things. And then once it does, he's got the physicality, the explosive qualities, and that speed to capitalize on that opening when it comes. He can shift away from people and make people miss. He can drive through tackles. It's very hard to find flaws within him. And I think the most interesting thing is when you actually look at some of the rankings, like Dane Brugler had a first-round grade on him, and other people had him in the first round. And those that didn't had him squarely in the top 40, right alongside Breece Hall. And, you know, in a time when the position is so undervalued, you know, you get good running backs that get sort of shunted into round 3 just because. And he was being talked about as a legit first rounder. 20 years ago, he probably would have been a top 10 pick.
Sure.
So I think getting him in this range, you've got a chance to get one of the best running backs in the NFL. And it doesn't mean that he's going to be that, but that's what you've just drafted.
Right. And it does make you wonder what that means for Chris Carson necessarily. I know Pete Carroll was asked about that in the press conference following, and they don't have a ton of information yet on his availability going forward, but I have to think that it's good. Well, for one, just based on the injury history of both Carson and Penny, it's good insurance just for that fact.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and I like to make this point a lot, is that his salary, I've not had a look at what the salary of the 41st pick last year is, but it'll be something like $2 million a year, you know, average. So it won't be $2 million this year, but it will be average $2 million a year or something like that. And you get that for 4 years, and then you've got potential of a pretty modest franchise tag if you wanted to. So when people say the value of the pick isn't good in that you've taken one very early, actually the cost of having, you know, because you can get major production from a running back at $2 million a year. And if you're getting 1,000, 1,500 yards out of this running back for $2 million a year, that's great, because then you can go and spend your money elsewhere. You know, if there's a great pass rusher in free agency next year and you want to go and spend 17, 18, 19 million dollars a year on him, you can do that. That's where you invest your money. You've got your running back there, and actually he's on $2 million a year. So there is actually some value to be had by drafting somebody who's really talented in this range, letting them get out there and produce, and having them on a cheap contract. And because of the injuries to Carson and Penny, and you can't really trust them to stay healthy, you've now got another guy in there that helps. And look, I remember writing after the Giants game in 2014, and I think the Raiders game in 2014, the hardest thing this team will ever have to do, and I still think this, is replace Marshawn Lynch. And they've never been able to do it. They've kept sort of plugging guys in, and they've tried it the other way, haven't they? Oh, Thomas Rawls, undrafted free agent. We'll try him. No, didn't work. Chris Carson looks good, can't stay healthy. There's a reason he's there in the 7th round. They've tried it the other way as well. Rashad Penny can't stay healthy. He's shown a few flashes last year. You know, they've tried to find these guys. When they have someone running the ball very well, as Penny did at the end of last season, they look like a completely different team. And Pete Carroll wants to run the ball. So Kenneth Walker gives them a chance to run the ball effectively and be the kind of team they want to be. I punched the air when I heard his name. Fantastic. You know, love the player, love the pick. Screw the value. I don't care. I'm just, you know, life's too short to be worrying about the value of positions in the NFL. Just enjoy the pick. Now go and watch some highlights on YouTube of Kenneth Walker.
Well, if you want to enjoy the value of a couple picks and maybe a return to what Pete Carroll looks for at cornerback, in round 4, you get the Cincinnati cornerback that played opposite of Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. And then in round 5, you get a really interesting pick with Tyrek Woolen, who I know a lot of people had going a whole lot earlier just based on his physical profile alone, but ending up in probably what could be the best spot for him, Tyrek Woolen coming to the Seahawks in round 5.
Yeah, I think a couple of really good picks. I had Kobe Bryant in the 4th round. They took him in the 4th round. He is tough, really tough. Hard-nosed mentality. The fastest player that you're ever going to see, but a leader, very competitive in run support. He has got a chance to come in and compete right away to start. Very experienced player, had 5 years at Cincinnati, 4 where he took a lot of snaps. So he's coming in there, and they have moved away from the kind of strict rules on corners because he has 30-inch arms. So he's short on corner. But I think if you want to draft play, and I like this, if you want to draft for a certain culture and mentality, I think that Kobe Bryant helps you get there. No nonsense, serious football man. That's what a very serious individual, and I like that pick. And then Tariq Woolen is just a complete upside, high ceiling prospect. When we did I do an interview with Jim Nagy before every Senior Bowl, and I'd not heard of Tariq Woolen, and he just basically said, threw at the end, he went, "Hey, Tariq Woolen, keep an eye on this guy. He's got this, he runs this, he jumps this. He could be in the 1st round because of these traits." People were talking about him as who's the cornerback who was in Dallas and then went to Miami in free agency, Byron.
Oh,
Jones.
yeah. Byron Jones?
He compared him to him in terms of the physicality. And then he gets to the combine, unbelievable testing work out there. During the drills, he was very stiff. You could see that in his transitions. Brandon were not smooth. He doesn't have loose hips when he's working in space. So that's why I think he's lasted. He's going to need some work. He's only played cornerback for 2 years, but he's someone you bring in.
Wide receiver convert.
Yeah, you give him a try. And I think it's a nice developmental project for them. And, I think what I've written an article about the draft. What I wanted them to do was build the trenches, invest in the trenches, 2 offensive tackles and a pass rusher, and 2 pass rushers, actually, because we're going to talk about the other one in a moment. 2 cornerbacks and 2 receivers. They are, short of cornerback, the premium positions in the NFL right now. That's it. It's getting after the quarterback and protecting the quarterback. It's the quarterback. It's also the people he's throwing to, and the people who are trying to break up those passes. They've invested in the most important positions in the league. So, yeah, there was 2 thumbs up to those picks, and I had Tariq Woolen graded in the end of round 2. They got him in round 4. So great pick.
Yep, great. Round 5, even top of round 5. They
round 5,
back and they picked up the extra 7th rounder from Kansas City, and then they went from Tariq to Tyrek Smith, the Ohio State pass rusher. Did you have him going as far as the 5th round, Rob?
Yep, I had him. No, sorry, I didn't. I had him in the 4th round, and
this is weird. We're talking about the Seahawks getting players after you had them ranked, and this is a very strange order that we're not used to.
Yeah, I know it's very unusual. Almost feels a little bit, feels a bit wrong. But no, a really good player, and not somebody who I would expect to come in and set the world on fire as a pass rusher, but certainly somebody who can work into a rotation. People have, I think Jeff got in touch and thought Jacob Martin-esque type player. I think he may even have a little bit more about him than that. The thing about this player is at the Senior Bowl, he and Trevor Penning. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I didn't really like Trevor Penning, is because it was ridiculous. All Smith was trying to do was get out there and compete in the Senior Bowl, and Trevor Penning kept trying to fight him all the time. And there was one point where he threw him into a goal post. There's one point where he sort of shoved him over and then dove headfirst on him. And Tyrek Smith got up and was pushing him, shoving him. And I quite frankly, he would have been completely well within his rights to throw a punch at Trevor Penning. It would maybe not have been the wisest thing given Trevor Penning's 320 pounds, but I was on Team Smith if you were going to pick sides on that one. So that's how he was known. I think he's got a chance. They need somebody like this who can come in, give it a go. That first preseason game, if he's healthy and playing, I'll be interested to see how he gets on. And that's the same for the cornerbacks and the receivers that they drafted today as well. Interesting to see how they get on, because I think he's got something about him.
Well, and Corbin Smith, he tweeted out a fact about Smith. He said that he had the 2nd highest pressure rate in college football among qualified defenders, 22.3%. That was in 2020. So sometimes if you go back a year, guys don't always steadily progress. Sometimes they have a really good year and then a down year, and people tend to forget about them a little bit and maybe slip to the 5th round.
Yeah, and if we're talking about sort of pass rush win percentage, I don't have Smith's, but Boye Mafe, it was 19.8%, which is, it's more than David Ajabo. It was more than Sam Williams. It was more than Drake Jackson. It was more than Josh Paschal. It was more than Jermaine Johnson. It was more than Travon Walker. So, but he's 23.
And then to close this out, we go to round 7 for the Seahawks. They had a big break from where they selected in round 5, waited around till round 7 where they had 2 picks, and they go wide receiver with both. They go Bo Melton with at wide receiver with the first pick, and then Tyrek Young out of Lenore Ryan, I believe, who played in the Shrine Bowl, and it was their final pick.
Yep. So Bo Melton, I had a 4th round grade on, and they got him in the 7th.
He's a little on the smaller side, but 4.3 speed.
He is. Yep, small, but like you say, 4.3 speed, 38-inch vertical, used as a gunner at Rutgers, so there's some special teams value there. He was a team captain for 2 years at Rutgers. He's got a legit chance to make it. I mean, his highlights reel is pretty good. I would recommend people going and checking that out. Again, we're talking about a 7th round pick here. This is a guy that may not even make the roster. He might get cut in camp. He's essentially the undrafted free agent that they've taken in the draft. That's what the 7th round is. So, I'm not going to get my hopes too much up with him, but I think you've taken somebody there who has got a chance to fit in with the culture, provide something on special teams, chip in as a pass catcher. I think as a 7th round pick, fantastic value here. If they'd have taken him in the 4th, 5th round, you would have completely understood it.
In terms of special teams, are you thinking more as a gunner, or do you think there's some returnability there that has he done any of that in college?
I think anytime you have a guy who is his size and is running a 4.3, you might as well see if they can field some kicks. But he was used as a gunner at Rutgers.
And then Tyrek Young, larger wide receiver, 6'3". I've seen 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds, bigger guy. But I have to think that he's a fast guy as well, because Pete Carroll just likes fast guys.
Yep. I've got his pro day numbers here. He had a 4.44 at his pro day at 225 pounds, 6'2", 37-inch vertical, 11.3 broad. Fantastic athlete. They had a visit with him, I think, not so long ago. So there was some interest there. He hasn't played. I don't think he's played receiver very long either. He's a developmental guy. I had him in the 6th or 7th round on my board. There's not a great deal of tape out there for you to study him. I may have had him higher if I had the chance to study him a little bit more. But based on what I did see, you were talking about a developmental player who just looks, I wish I looked like him. The amount of time I spend in the gym, and it doesn't matter. I will always look the way I look. It doesn't matter how heavy weights that I lift. If I go in an extra day a week, I always tend to look the same. And I look at this guy and think, why can't I just look like him? So he looks terrific. So yeah, again, a guy that he may never amount to anything, but it's the 7th round, and they've drafted somebody in the 7th round who could make the roster. So good for them.
Are there any disappointments now that the draft is finished? Are there any areas that you wish that maybe they would have addressed rather than go with one area or another?
No, there's no disappointments for me.
They didn't get a quarterback, Rob.
I couldn't. I mean, look, we can spend a second on that. I mean, I think that the only sort of one area that I'm a little bit sort of I'm sort of more sad that they didn't get a player in his linebacker, just because it was such a good linebacker class and they've not got anywhere near it. But I'm not going to lose any sleep about that, frankly. I mean, there were a couple of good ones at the end of the round 3 that were really disappointing to see go last night. Channing Tindall, Leo Chanel. If they'd have sneaked up into the back end of round 3 and taken one of those, I'd have danced around the room. But Kobe Bryant, perfectly fine at the top of round 4 instead, and I think they probably just decided that they wanted him instead. So, as somebody who has moaned about them shifting resource from safety and linebacker to the trenches, I'm not going to complain about them not spending a high pick on a linebacker. And as for the quarterbacks, I mean, look, and this is going to sound really, self-serving, but I feel really sort of proud actually that and chuffed that for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been on the radio in Seattle. I've been on shows and podcasts. I've done my own podcast and written numerous articles just going how crap this quarterback class is. Do not draft a quarterback. And the league has spoken and said, yes, we agree. They're just, I couldn't believe the talk of Desmond Ridder in round one. I mean, to me, it was just when I saw people saying it, people were sending me DMs on Twitter going, have you seen this? Someone said, Desmond Ridder should go 9th overall. I was like, what? I couldn't believe that. I mean, like, in no way, shape, or form should Desmond Ridder have been even discussed as a first-round pick. He went in exactly the range he should have gone. Ditto Sam Howell. I've said a million times. I watched Sam Howell, and more often than not, I'd have to turn the tape off because I just didn't see anything. There was nothing. I mean, he went in the 5th round in the end.
I wanted him in the 5th, Rob, or even the late 4th. I would have been happy late 4th.
I just see nothing. I just saw nothing. There was not one thing I saw on tape that made me think he can be a starter in the NFL. And therefore, what's the point in drafting him? Desmond Ridder has reached his ceiling, and he's going to come in and he's going to be exactly the same next year as he is today, and in 2 years and 3 years, which is a moderate arm, horrible accuracy all over the place, capable of great throws, but also just not special in any way, shape, or form. Matt Corral, issues there with accuracy, some character issues. He's gone in round 3. Malik Willis is, incredible.
He had that one perfect spot though. Malik Willis, he'll have 2 years to learn behind Ryan Tannehill, and maybe he could end up being a starter eventually.
He bloody needs 2 years to learn behind Ryan Tannehill because
look, if Trey Lance needs a whole year and they still can't figure out how to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, or they aren't willing to, then
the fact that
the same kind of learning curve.
The fact that the Niners did that last year is indicative that teams still make stupid quarterback decisions. But with Malik Willis, he just couldn't. I mean, I didn't track Twitter. I had my mentions open so I could answer questions if anyone had any. But on Twitter, I didn't want to. People were tipping picks, and I didn't want to see it, so I didn't have the time out. But people kept sort of including me in conversations about drafting Malik Willis, and it seemed that Seahawks Twitter was all in on that one. And I think all you've done is you've just seen that video of him throwing and then particularly fetching shorts at his pro day, that one throw across his body downfield, haven't you?
It was a really impressive throw, Rob.
It was a lovely throw, but it's not football. And then you actually put on the old 22, what you will see is a guy who never throws over the middle ever.
Right.
He could look straight down the field, staring. You can see his helmet directly pointing at the receiver who is wide open downfield, and he refusing to throw the pass and running himself in. He was sacked 51 times.
0 sacks in his pro day, Rob. 0 sacks.
There was no sacks. You're right. There was no sacks, no defensive lineman, no weather. It was But anyway,
I feel a little vindicated too because I mean, you go back and you watch Drew Lock's pro tape in Denver, and then you watch any of the college guys, and you go, well, yeah, Drew Lock's better than a better prospect. Even still than any of the guys coming up this year.
It doesn't matter if he is or not. The point is that they're not better than Drew Lock. So if they're not better than Drew Lock, why bother? You've got Drew Lock.
And you've got Gino, who's probably going to be the starter anyway.
Because Drew Lock's seen as sort of damaged goods. If you draft Drew Lock in second round, Seahawks fans would go, great, love it. Love that pick. Because he's mobile, he's got a big arm, he was in the SEC, played well against Alabama. I mean, that people will be celebrating that pick. Because he's been in Denver for 3 years, playing for a very defensive-minded head coach, people are like, okay, he's no good. Get me the new toy. I want my new car. I want the new flashy iPad or iPhone or something, which is a rookie quarterback. But then they're no better. You might as well have him as a reclamation project rather than wasting a draft pick on one of these quarterbacks. And incidentally, there's quarterbacks next year who are better, far better. There's one that I keep boring everybody to death about at Kentucky called Will Levis. People are going to get sick of hearing that name. I mean, my worry is that he's going to end up being the first overall pick next year, or the second behind Will Anderson at Alabama. But if he's not, and he goes in the Josh Allen kind of range, Seahawks are probably going to be picking in that range anyway. It might not even have to trade up. But even if they do, they've got 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, right now. Maybe they'll have more by then. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen over the next sort of 6 to 8 months? They've got a receiver. They've got to find a way to pay. But what happened with Frank Clark? Maybe that happens again. So you never know what's going to happen with the stock. They're perfectly aligned now. So and guess what? When they draft that quarterback next year, people aren't going to be wondering who's going to protect him because they've just drafted 2 defensive tackles.
Yes.
They've got a great. They're not going to be wondering who's going to be his safety valve because they've got a great. They've drafted a running back, and they've I imagine they're going to pay DK Metcalf within the next 2 months. So the quarterback that comes into that environment will be coming into a fantastic environment with top receivers, hopefully a good O-line, a good running game. It'd be perfect to slot in a very talented young quarterback. So bring it on.
I definitely like the idea better, Rob, of, if Russell Wilson were here and you're talking about marching out 2 rookie offensive tackles on either side, I'd probably be a little bit concerned. But yes, you put the 2 rookie tackles out there for year 1. They learn how to work together. Yeah. And then next year, yes, then you have the rookie quarterback to come in and you got a little bit of a cohesive line in front of him.
Yeah, that's it. And I think the only sort of and I think there's sort of when I'm sort of describing the offense there, it makes sense. There's a pathway, isn't there? You can see what they're doing. The concern for me, I suppose, is the defense because I don't think it looks particularly good. And I like Boye Mafe and I like Darrell Taylor. Is it a scary pass rush? No, not really. They've got a collection of parts. Maybe the collection will be better than sort of any particular individual, but they're still missing that one, truly excellent player, that difference maker,
right?
Who can wreck a game. And they've needed that for a while. And I don't really know how they're going to get it because they obviously desperately want it, but acquiring it's not easy. And I don't know how they go about that. But until they have got that serious game-changing defensive player, the defense is probably only going to be average at best. So I don't know how they go about that. Maybe they'll be so bad that they'll have, and maybe Russell Wilson's arms will fall off, and they'll have the 1st and 2nd overall pick next year, and they can take Will Anderson to be that and a quarterback. And if they do that, then we can all have a tequila because that'd be fantastic.
There we go. I like the optimism, Rob. Just we need our team to be bad and the Broncos to be bad, and then we can be really, really good in 2023.
I'd settle for the Denver Broncos being really bad and Seattle being okay, and we can get the quarterback through the Broncos rather than our own misery.
There we go.
But to be honest, I don't care. I'm going to go to Seattle and watch a game this year, whatever, because I'm more interested in this than the status quo. I'm more interested in this rebuild, this build, this new era than I was of just watching the same old Seahawks who weren't contenders, but they were kind of, pretend contenders.
Well, speaking of the rebuild, Rob, you have your rebuild podcast. You got anything coming up or planned for this offseason now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited actually because I can't wait to get into sort of the 2023 players because I want to watch the top. Usually, what's the point in watching the top players that are going to be eligible for the next year's draft because you're never going to be drafting early enough for them. But now it feels with 2 potentially high picks that there's a really good chance of getting some of these guys. I can't wait to pour into the top quarterbacks. I am going to be writing about them, talking about them throughout the summer. I mean, listen, I'm not going to be doing the hours I've been doing for the last 4 months because that would be, probably finish me off. But certainly I am going to be doing some work and we'll be publishing it out there in one form or another on the 2023 draft. And I'm excited to do that. I'm energized by it. I don't expect every pick to be a player that I love, as in the case of Charles Cross. I'm a big boy and can deal with them taking players that I don't rate highly. Now I'm interested to see this class in the NFL, and I'm interested to see what they do next. And I can't wait to watch Will Levis play. I might even go and watch Will Levis in person. And maybe I can get a flight over to Kentucky, find myself a press pass, and get in there and watch the guy and have a little chat with him afterwards. Who knows? I mean, the ideas are flowing to do something like that. So let me see if I can pull it off.
I love it. Can't wait to check it out. He's Rob Staton of Seahawks Draft Blog. Rob, really appreciate everything that you've done here through the offseason leading up toward this draft, and just happy to finally see who we have now and look forward to this 2022 season.
Yeah, bring it on. No, always good to chat to you, Brandon. Thank you for the invitation.
And I think with that, there's only one thing left to say. Go Hawks.